The Manchester courtroom fell silent. Every eye locked on Carolyn Leavitt as she challenged Judge Gerald Harrington. "This court is not a game, Mrs. Leavitt," he mocked, but she countered with a chilling smile, then unleashed evidence accusing him before the entire court. Liberty Vanguard's lawyers sprang up in protest, voice sharp, while Harrington paled, confronted with documents exposing his sins. As the Sentinel network quietly tightened its grip, Carolyn pressed forward, each word like a blade slicing through the veil of corruption. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. In the courtroom, the air was steeped in solemnity, with gazes from the audience fixed on the witness stand. Carolyn Leavitt, 27, White House press secretary, stood tall, her eyes sharp. She was summoned as the key witness in an investigation into illegal funding by Liberty Vanguard PAC. Accusations claimed she married real estate millionaire Nicholas Riccio to conceal anonymous donations. In a bold pink suit, Carolyn was ready to face any questioning. On X, posts branded her a political opportunist or millionaire's wife laundering money, with one post shared tens of thousands of times, declaring, "Carolyn Leavitt used Riccio to legitimize dirty money." The slander, spread by accounts linked to Liberty Vanguard, shook the reputation she had built over years, from her congressional campaign to her role as press secretary. Judge Gerald Harrington, with an authoritative presence and silver hair, presided over the trial. Known for his strict oversight, he always put the law first. Harrington struck his gavel, the woods echo like a slashing blade, silencing all whispers. "The trial begins," he announced, his voice deep and measured, like a king issuing commands in his court. He sat, his gaze sweeping the room, pausing on Carolyn. A faint cold smile flickered across his lips, a hint of disdain. "Carolyn Leavitt," he began, his voice deliberate, each word weighed like an arrow. "This court requires your testimony regarding allegations of illegal funding by Liberty Vanguard's super PAC. I hope you understand this courtroom demands verifiable evidence, under Rule 803 of the Federal Rules of Evidence, not sentimental stories, embellished to polish your reputation." The mockery, alluding to rumors she married Riccio for money, sparked murmurs in the courtroom. A reporter in the back row typed frantically, messaging, "Harrington targets Leavitt's marriage." Some spectators chuckled softly, their skeptical eyes on Carolyn, as if agreeing with Liberty Vanguard's portrayal of her as an opportunist. Jasmine Carter, an investigative journalist in the crowd, paused her note-taking, her eyes flashing with indignation, but Carolyn didn't let the sarcasm deter her. She clenched her fists, her face calm. She was used to doubts about her marriage to Riccio, 32 years her senior, but being publicly insinuated at trial was another challenge. She gripped the witness stand, feeling her heart pound, not from fear but from the fire of determination burning within. "Your Honor," she replied, her voice clear, unwavering, "I'm here to provide evidence of Liberty Vanguard's illegal transactions, not to respond to rumors they've spread to discredit me." She paused, her eyes locked on Harrington, as if making him feel the weight of the truth. "I have emails, transfer receipts and recordings, proving Liberty Vanguard funneled millions through shell companies like Granite Holdings LLC to bribe officials. Does the court want me to present them now?" Harrington narrowed his eyes, the mocking smile returning, sharper, more venomous. "Mrs. Leavitt," he interrupted, his tone dripping with superiority, like a professor scolding a student, "this court has no time for the dramatic antics of a young woman thinking she can buy credibility with her husband's money." He leaned forward, his gaze like a blade, cutting through Caroline's confidence. "You speak of evidence, then show us, instead of relying on Mr. Riccio's generosity to impress." The jab, directly implying her marriage was a financial transaction, stirred more murmurs. A middle-aged man shook his head, whispering, "I told you she's just a trophy wife." Caroline felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she kept her face composed. The rumor, spread by Liberty Vanguard through X posts, clung to her like a stain. One post, titled "Caroline Leavitt, From White House to Dirty Money," claimed she used Riccio to launder funds, accompanied by vicious comments like, "She sold her reputation to a millionaire," or "fake marriage to cover crimes." She had read them, each line like a knife, but told herself they couldn't define her. Here, in court, As Harrington used the rumors to humiliate her, she realized he didn't just want to embarrass her, he wanted to destroy her credibility before she could present her evidence. Your Honor, Caroline responded, her voice firm, each word like a bullet. I don't need anyone's money to speak the truth. Liberty Vanguard spread rumors about my marriage to cover their bribery network, and I have evidence to prove them wrong. She opened the folder on the stand, her fingers gliding over carefully organized pages. I have an email from a Liberty Vanguard executive confirming a $500,000 payment to dismiss a lawsuit. I have transfer receipts from Granite Holdings to a charity where a powerful individual plays a key role, and I have a recording of a bribery discussion. I move to submit them as Exhibits A, B, and C. Does the court want me to play the recording here? The courtroom air grew stifling, as if Caroline's testimony had drained the oxygen. Jasmine Carter, pen hovering over paper, nodded slightly, her eyes blazing with support. Rosa Delgado, an elderly resident holding a Justice for Manchester sign, gripped her neighbor's hand, whispering, "She's going to do it." But Harrington wouldn't let Caroline gain the upper hand easily. He slammed his gavel, the sound echoing like thunder, and stood, his tall figure casting a shadow over the witness stand. "Mrs. Leavitt," he barked, his voice trembling with anger, but cloaked in refined legal veneer. "This court is not a stage for a naive girl like you to play political games, hiding behind your husband's generosity for attention." The mockery, again targeting the marriage rumor, ignited a storm of whispers. A reporter typed rapidly, messaging, "Harrington calls Leavitt a husband's puppet." But Caroline sensed his anger was a sign of fear that her evidence would expose everything. Harrington wasn't done. He sat, but his eyes remained fixed on Caroline, like a predator. "I advise you, Mrs. Leavitt," he continued, his voice slow, laced with feigned concern. "Focus on evidence, if you have any, instead of staging a drama to buy reputation with Mr. Riccio's wealth. This courtroom is not the place to prove the value of your marriage." The sarcasm, wrapped in advice, drew soft chuckles from some spectators, but it also made Jasmine Carter grip her pen tighter, her eyes burning with rage. Caroline gave a faint smile, not from amusement, but because she knew she'd cornered him. "Your Honor," she replied, her voice cold but proper, "I'm not here to prove any marriage. Liberty Vanguard thought slandering me would silence me, but they're wrong." She held up a printed email for the room to see. "This is the first piece of evidence, confirming a bribe from Liberty Vanguard. Shall I read it aloud?" Harrington's face flushed, his hand trembling slightly as he gripped the bench. He opened his mouth about to interrupt, but Caroline's resolute gaze made him falter. He took a deep breath, trying to regain his authority. "Leavitt," he said, his voice lower but still sharp as a blade, "I warn you, this courtroom does not tolerate cheap tales of love and money, no matter how expensively they're bought. If you have nothing more than accusations and Mr. Riccio's support, you're wasting everyone's time." The final jab again at her marriage divided the audience. Some shook their heads, believing Caroline was just a young attention seeker, but others, especially Manchester residents who lost homes to Liberty Vanguard's projects, looked at her with hope. Caroline didn't let Harrington's sarcasm shake her. She knew he was using the rumors, seeded by Liberty Vanguard through thousands of X-posts, to distract her. But she was prepared. She'd faced vicious comments, skeptical stares, and told herself the truth was her strongest weapon. Placing her hand on the folder, her voice rang out, powerful and undeniable. "Your Honor, the truth doesn't need to be bought. I move for the court to play the recording now, or I'll proceed with Granite Holdings transactions. The choice is yours." Harrington gripped his gavel, his eyes flashing with panic. "The court needs to review the evidence." Caroline Leavitt stepped out of the Manchester courthouse, her eyes still sharp, but her heart heavy. The air outside was stifling, reporters swarming like vultures, cameras flashing relentlessly. "Mrs. Leavitt, is it true your marriage to Riccio is a front to launder money for Liberty Vanguard?" one shouted. Caroline paused, took a deep breath, and replied coldly, "I'm here to tell the truth. Those who slander me will soon face the evidence." She pushed through the crowd, feeling probing eyes from all sides. On X, accusations about her spread like wildfire. Posts called her a political opportunist, millionaire's wife hiding dark money. One post, shared thousands of times, declared Caroline Leavitt used Nicholas Riccio to legitimize dirty money from Liberty Vanguard. The reputation she'd built over years, from her House campaign to White House press secretary, was under threat. But Caroline was no stranger to dirty political games. She knew the slander wasn't just aimed at her, it was meant to conceal something bigger, something tied to Judge Gerald Harrington himself. Back at her office in downtown Manchester, Caroline found an unmarked envelope slipped under the door. Inside was a stack of documents, transfer records from Liberty Vanguard to shell companies, with a handwritten note, "Harrington knows everything. Be careful." Her heart raced. She immediately called Nicholas Riccio, who was in Boston handling real estate business. "Nick, I need you to look at these documents," she said over the phone, her voice urgent. "Liberty Vanguard approached you, didn't they?" Nicholas was silent for a moment, then sighed. "They pitched some real estate projects in New Hampshire, but I turned them down. Something felt off. Too much money, no clear source." He hesitated. "Caroline, if you dig deeper, it's going to be dangerous. These people don't play games." She gave a faint smile, though he couldn't see. "I'm not stopping Nick, not now." Caroline knew she needed an ally outside her safe circle. She contacted Jasmine Carter, an investigative journalist, known for exposing political corruption. Jasmine had been humiliated by Harrington, in a trial 2 years earlier, when he dismissed her investigation into illegal funding as lacking legal basis. Meeting at a small coffee shop, Jasmine eyed Caroline with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. "You think you can take on Harrington?" she asked, her voice dry. "He's not just a judge, he's part of a bigger machine." Caroline slid the documents across the table. "I have evidence Liberty Vanguard funneled money to Harrington's companies, but I need you to help me dig deeper." Jasmine skimmed the pages, her brow furrowing. "If this is real," she said, "we're up against a cross-state bribery network." Caroline nodded, her eyes blazing. "Then let's get started." She knew each step forward pushed her closer to the edge, but retreating wasn't an option. Caroline Leavitt sat in Jasmine Carter's cramped apartment, light from a desk lamp illuminating the anonymous documents strewn across the scarred wooden table. Transfer records from Liberty Vanguard to shell companies lay scattered, each number a clue to a darker secret. Caroline pointed to one company, Granite Holdings LLC, registered under an obscure lawyer, but tied to a bank account in the Cayman Islands. "I looked it up," she said, her voice low but sharp. "Granite Holdings makes regular transfers to a charity, and Harrington sits on its board." Jasmine, glasses slipping down her nose, scanned the documents, her finger pausing on a $2 million transaction. "This isn't just political funding," she whispered, her voice tinged with caution. "This is money laundering, on a massive scale." She looked up, her eyes sharp as knives. "Harrington can't be doing this alone. A judge, even a powerful one, needs allies. Politicians, businessmen, maybe even police." Caroline nodded, a heavy weight settling in her chest. She knew she was touching a vast web of corruption, and each discovery brought her closer to a dangerous line. To verify the information, Caroline and Jasmine decided to meet David Walsh, a former Liberty Vanguard campaign worker. They arranged to meet at a secluded park on the outskirts of Manchester, where tree shadows obscured the streetlights, creating a sense of isolation. David, a middle-aged man with speckled gray hair, appeared in a worn jacket, his eyes constantly darting as if afraid of being followed. "I only worked behind the scenes," he said, his voice trembling, "but I saw how they operated. Liberty Vanguard didn't just fund campaigns, they bought rulings, and Harrington was their biggest bribe taker." Caroline exchanged a glance with Jasmine, her heart racing. "Do you have concrete evidence?" she asked, her voice calm but pressing. David pulled a small USB from his pocket, sliding it across the damp wooden bench. "Emails, transfer receipts, a recording. Harrington agreed to dismiss a lawsuit against Liberty Vanguard for $500,000. He bowed his head, his voice softening. "I left because my conscience couldn't take it. But if this gets out, they'll hunt me down." Caroline sensed the fear in every word David spoke, and a part of her trembled, not from fear but from realizing the weight of the responsibility she carried. Jasmine took the USB, her eyes flashing with determination mixed with worry. "We'll protect you," she said, though all three knew the promise was as fragile as mist. Caroline placed a hand on David's shoulder, her voice gentle but firm. You did the right thing. We'll make sure the truth comes out. But deep down, she knew protecting David would demand more than words, perhaps even lives. Back at the apartment, Jasmine plugged the USB into her laptop, the screen displaying a series of emails between Harrington and a Liberty Vanguard executive. One email explicitly stated, "The lawsuit ruling will be handled. Ensure payment is on time." A short recording played, Harrington's voice cold. "I want $1 million, no negotiation." Caroline clenched her fists, anger flaring. Harrington didn't just mock her in court. He was a manipulator of justice, turning the courtroom into a tool for personal gain. "We need to find out who's behind Liberty Vanguard," she said, turning to Jasmine. "Harrington's a puppet, but who's pulling the strings?" Jasmine nodded, but her eyes betrayed deep concern. "Caroline, if we keep going, there's no turning back. They'll do anything to silence us, and David." Caroline gave a faint smile, her eyes burning like an unquenchable flame. They picked the wrong person to silence. Caroline Levitt left Jasmine Carter's apartment late at night, Manchester's streetlights flickering faintly. Her mind reeled with their discoveries, emails, recordings, and David Walsh's testimony, all pointing directly to Judge Gerald Harrington as the center of Liberty Vanguard's bribery network. She gripped the USB in her coat pocket, feeling like she was carrying an unexploded bomb. The cold wind blew, but it wasn't as chilling as the growing sense that someone was watching her. As Caroline opened her phone to call a ride, an email notification popped up from an anonymous address. "Stop digging, Levitt. You don't know who you're up against." Attached was a photo of her leaving the courthouse that afternoon, taken from a hidden angle. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to stay calm. This wasn't a random threat. The sender knew exactly what she was doing. She screenshot the email and sent it to Jasmine with a brief note. "We're being watched. Be careful." Just as she reached the street corner, Caroline noticed a figure standing under a tree's shadow, a few meters away. The streetlight illuminated the gaunt face and cold eyes of Lucas Kane, a former security operative known for working with shady political organizations. She'd heard of him through Nicholas, a man who cleaned up for the powerful. "Levitt," Kane said, his voice low and menacing. "Harrington sends his regards. You should drop this case unless you want things to get complicated." Caroline stood tall, her eyes never leaving Kane. "If Harrington thinks an email and a few threats will silence me, he's mistaken," she replied, her voice steely. Kane smirked, stepping closer, his hand in his pocket as if ready to act. "You're smart, but not wise enough. Those documents, they'll bury you before they touch Harrington." He paused, his eyes glinting with amusement. "Or maybe your husband, Riccio, will pay the price first." The mention of Nicholas made Caroline's blood boil. "Threatening my family is a big mistake, Kane," she said, her voice low but sharp as a blade. She stepped back, her hand gripping her phone, ready to dial 911. Kane chuckled softly but didn't advance. "You have 48 hours to back off," he said, then turned and vanished into the darkness. Caroline stood still, her breathing heavy. She called Nicholas immediately, briefly recounting Kane's encounter. "I'm fine, but you need to check the house's security," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Nicholas, his voice deep with worry, replied, "I'll hire protection for you right away." "Caroline, who are you up against?" She sighed, her eyes scanning the empty street. "A system bigger than we thought, but I'm not stopping." Back at her apartment, Caroline rechecked the threatening email, noting it was sent through an encrypted server. She texted Jasmine, "Kane is Harrington's man. We need to protect David and speed up releasing the evidence." Lying in bed, she couldn't sleep, her mind racing with images of Kane and his chilling voice. But instead of fear, she felt a fire ignite. Harrington and Kane thought they could scare her into backing down, but they didn't understand. Caroline Levitt never gave up. She closed her eyes, telling herself 48 hours, they'll see who's out of time. The next day in the courtroom the tension was palpable, as if every eye was locked on Caroline Levitt. She stood at the witness stand, fluorescent lights highlighting her resolute face, though Lucas Kane's threat from the previous night lingered like a blade at her throat. After the chilling confrontation, she was more determined to expose the truth about Liberty Vanguard and Judge Gerald Harrington's role. The gallery was packed, reporters scribbling furiously, cameras flashing with every move she made, On X, defamatory posts about her spread relentlessly. Caroline Leavitt, political trophy or money launderer. But she didn't let the slander shake her. Today she would testify, and she carried a sharp weapon: David Walsh's documents. Judge Harrington, with his commanding presence and silver hair gleaming under the lights, sat in the presiding chair. His gaze was icy, sweeping the room as if to quash any defiance. "Mrs. Leavitt," he began, his voice deep and measured, "this court requires your testimony regarding allegations of illegal funding by Liberty Vanguard. All arguments must be based on verifiable evidence, not speculation or emotion." His words, though formal, carried a hint of warning, as if reminding her of his supreme authority in this courtroom. Caroline took a deep breath, placing her folder on the stand, her fingers lightly brushing the pages. "Your Honor," she began, her voice clear and confident, "I have evidence showing Liberty Vanguard funneled millions through shell companies, including Granite Holdings LLC, to illegally fund election campaigns. These transactions grossly violate the Federal Election Campaign Act and involve bribing officials." She paused, her eyes locked on Harrington, as if piercing his legal facade. "Specifically, I have emails, transfer receipts, and recordings proving payments to individuals within the judicial system." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Harrington gripped his gavel, his eyes flickering with unease, though his face remained neutral. "Mrs. Leavitt," he interrupted, his voice firm, "this court has yet to see grounds for accepting vague insinuations. Per Section 52 of the Federal Election Campaign Act, all evidence must be authenticated before presentation. You're wasting the court's time with baseless arguments." The sarcasm, cloaked in legal rhetoric, drew soft chuckles from some spectators. He continued, "If you intend to rely on emotion rather than statute, the court advises you to reconsider." Caroline didn't flinch. She pulled a printed email from her folder, holding it up for the room to see. "This is an email between a Liberty Vanguard executive and an individual closely tied to the judicial system," she said, her voice sharp as a blade. "It confirms a $500,000 payment to ensure a lawsuit was dismissed. I'm prepared to submit the original for court verification." She deliberately avoided naming Harrington, but her gaze made it clear, he was the target. She felt her pulse, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of cornering Harrington. Harrington's face flushed, his hand trembling slightly as he held the gavel. "The court will review the documents after authentication by the clerk," he said, his voice strained, lacking its usual confidence. "But Mrs. Leavitt, this argument seems better suited for tabloid headlines. This court is not a stage for political theatrics." The mockery sparked more whispers in the courtroom, but Caroline stood firm, her eyes never leaving him. "Your Honor," she replied, her voice cold but proper, "the truth isn't theater. I have further evidence, including a recording of a bribery discussion. Does the court wish to hear it now, or does it need more time to prepare?" The air grew stifling, as if the entire room held its breath. Harrington slammed his gavel, his voice booming. "The court declares a recess. All documents must be submitted to the clerk before proceeding." He left his chair, striding away quickly, but his glance at Caroline was filled with anger and worry. She knew she'd struck a nerve, but this small victory came with greater risks. In the hallway, reporters swarmed her like a tidal wave. "Mrs. Leavitt, are you implying Judge Harrington took bribes?" one shouted. Caroline turned, her gaze unwavering. "I'm speaking the truth, and the truth will speak for itself." But as she stepped out of the courthouse, her phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine. "Kane was just spotted near David Walsh's place. He knows we have the USB. We need to act fast." Caroline clenched her fist, the sense of danger closing in. Harrington wasn't just countering with words, he was unleashing his most dangerous pawn. She texted back, "Protect David. I'll handle Harrington." Caroline Leavitt sat in her car, Manchester's streetlights streaking past the window, but her mind was consumed by Jasmine Carter's text. After the tense courtroom session where she cornered Harrington, Caroline knew he was pulling every string to silence her, and anyone who dared challenge him. But she couldn't let David, the key witness, fall into Kane's hands. She called Jasmine immediately, her voice urgent but controlled. "Have you gotten David to a safe place?" Jasmine, on the other end, replied with a hint of worry. "I took him to a motel in Concord, but Kane knows we have the USB. He's not acting alone, someone's tipping him off." Caroline gripped the steering wheel, her gaze resolute. Keep David anonymous. I'll find a way to protect him. She knew if David was compromised, the entire case could collapse. Caroline drove to a small bar on the outskirts, where she'd arranged to meet Ellen Brooks, a former Liberty Vanguard assistant. Ellen, a woman in her 40s with weary eyes, had contacted Jasmine after reading an X post about Caroline. She claimed to have game-changing information. In a dimly lit corner of the bar, Ellen slid a stack of documents across the table, her voice trembling. I worked for Liberty Vanguard for 3 years, she said. I saw how they bribed officials, and Harrington was their biggest client. These are internal emails, proof he took $2 million to rig 3 lawsuits. Caroline skimmed the documents, her heart pounding. One email explicitly stated, Harrington demands an additional $500,000 for next month's lawsuit. Ensure the charity receives the funds on time. Another document listed local politicians funded by Liberty Vanguard, with a note, approved by Harrington. This was the missing piece, evidence not only implicating Harrington, but exposing the entire corruption network. Why are you giving me this? Caroline asked, her eyes probing. Ellen bowed her head, her fingers digging into the table's edge. I was fired for refusing to transfer dirty money. They threatened my family, but when I saw you confront Harrington in court, I knew I couldn't stay silent. She looked up, her eyes flashing with resolve. You have to release this, but be careful. Liberty Vanguard has eyes everywhere. Caroline nodded, the weight of responsibility heavy. Ellen wasn't just a witness, she was a spark fueling her fight, but the risks had doubled. We'll protect you, Caroline said, though she knew the promise was hard to keep. But I need you to testify. Are you ready? Ellen hesitated, then nodded. If you can ensure my son's safety, I'll take the stand. Back at her apartment, Caroline texted Jasmine. Ellen Brooks has major evidence. We need to get her and David to safety. Jasmine replied instantly. I'm arranging a safe house through a contact, but Kane's still lurking. He might know about Ellen. Caroline gripped her phone, anger mingling with worry. Harrington wasn't just using Kane to intimidate, he was hunting everyone connected to her. She called Nicholas Riccio, her voice calm but urgent. Nick, I need you to contact the security team. Ellen and David are in danger. Nicholas, his voice deep with concern, replied, I'll send people right away, but Caroline, you're risking too much. If Harrington knows what she has, you'll become a target too. Caroline gave a faint smile, staring out at the dark window. I've been a target since I stepped into that courtroom. After hanging up, Caroline opened her laptop, reviewing Ellen's email. One note sent a chill through her. Harrington has direct contact with Liberty Vanguard's leadership. Codename, Sentinel. She frowned. Who was Sentinel? A politician? A businessman? Or the mastermind behind the entire network? She knew that to take down Harrington, she had to find Sentinel. But with Kane lurking and time running out, every decision now was a deadly chess move. She closed her eyes, telling herself, they want to play dirty? I'll play by the rules of truth. Caroline Leavitt drove through Manchester's dark streets, streetlights flickering on her windshield. Her mind was in turmoil after meeting Ellen Brooks, the former Liberty Vanguard assistant, who had handed her evidence implicating Judge Gerald Harrington and a broader corruption network. Emails, lists of politicians, and the mysterious name Sentinel pointed to a powerful figure behind Harrington. But Jasmine Carter's text about Lucas Kane lurking near David Walsh's hideout kept her from relaxing. With every passing minute, danger tightened its grip around her, David, and now Ellen. As Caroline turned into an alley near her apartment, her headlights suddenly caught a figure blocking the road. She slammed on the brakes, her heart pounding. Lucas Kane stepped out of the shadows, his eyes cold as steel, gripping a gleaming metal rod. Leavitt, he growled. You're more stubborn than I thought. Before she could react, Kane smashed the rod against her car door, the clash of metal ringing sharply. The window cracked into a spider web, but Caroline stayed calm, her trembling hand pressing the door lock. You think those papers will bring down Harrington? Kane sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. Hand over the USB and Ellen's documents, or I'll pay your husband Riccio a visit tonight. The mention of Nicholas made Caroline's blood boil. She cracked the window, her eyes sharp. "Harrington sent you to do his dirty work, but you're not smart enough to see he's using you," she said, her voice icy. "Step away, Kane, before I call the police." Kane narrowed his eyes, but instead of backing off, he struck the door again, shattering the glass. Caroline flinched as shards cut her hand, leaving a bleeding gash. She floored the gas, swerving past Kane, tires screeching. He shouted after her, "Your time's up, Leavitt." In the rearview mirror she saw Kane standing still, his eyes like a predator's. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from realization. Harrington was desperate. At her apartment, Caroline bandaged her cut, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. She called Jasmine immediately. "Kane attacked me," she said, her voice urgent. "He knows about Ellen. Are David and she safe?" Jasmine, her voice tense, replied, "They're at the safe house with Nicholas's security. But Kane has a source. Someone's leaking from our team." Caroline gripped her phone, suspicion flickering. Nicholas, no, he wouldn't betray her, but someone close was playing both sides. She called Nicholas, her voice calm, but urgent. "Nick, Kane just attacked me. You need to beef up security for David and Ellen now." Nicholas, his voice deep with worry, replied, "God, Caroline, are you okay? I'll send the best security team. But you have to stop. Harrington won't hesitate to kill." Caroline sighed, glancing at the cut on her hand. "If I stop, everything we have collapses. I won't let them win." After the call, Caroline opened her laptop, reviewing Ellen's documents. One email line chilled her. "Sentinel demands acceleration. Harrington must clear the slate before the next trial." Sentinel wasn't just the mastermind. They were ordering Harrington to act fast. She texted Jasmine, "Kane's directed by Sentinel. We need to find this person before they strike." But as she stood, her gaze caught a figure outside her window. Kane, or just a trick of the mind? She drew the curtains, her heart racing. Harrington and Sentinel were closing in, but she told herself, "They want war. I'll give them a battle." She clutched the USB, ready for the next trial, where she'd defend not just the truth, but her very life. Caroline Leavitt sat in a small meeting room on Manchester's outskirts, fluorescent lights casting shadows on tense faces. The cut on her hand, a mark from Lucas Kane's attack the previous night, still throbbed, but she hid it under her blazer sleeve. Before her was a new group of allies: Jasmine Carter, the sharp-eyed investigative journalist, Sarah Newen, a young lawyer specializing in campaign finance, and Marcus Tate, a community activist who'd led anti-corruption protests. They gathered to prepare to expose evidence against Judge Gerald Harrington and Liberty Vanguard's network, but news of Kane stalking David Walsh and Ellen Brooks weighed heavily. Caroline placed Ellen's documents on the table beside David's USB. "We have emails, recordings, and a list of politicians paid by Liberty Vanguard," she said, her voice low but steady. "Harrington didn't just take bribes, he rigged lawsuits to protect this network, and someone called Sentinel is behind it all." Sarah scanned the documents, her brow furrowed. "This is explosive," she said. "But Harrington won't let us release it easily." "Kane's a sign he's desperate." Jasmine nodded, opening her laptop to show X posts. "The public's divided," she said, pointing at the screen. One post with thousands of shares called Caroline a hero against corruption. Another, clearly from a fake account, smeared her as an opportunist using marriage to launder money. "We need to shape the narrative," Jasmine stressed. "Releasing the evidence now could flip public opinion." Marcus, his voice deep and resonant, added, "Manchester's community is ready to rally. Many were crushed by Liberty Vanguard's real estate projects. They just need a spark." Caroline nodded, the weight of responsibility heavy. She knew exposing the evidence would put her, David and Ellen, in greater danger, but silence meant defeat. "We need a two-pronged plan," she said. "Sarah, prepare legal filings for a federal investigation. Jasmine, coordinate with trusted journalists to release the documents. Marcus, mobilize the community for a press conference. I'll use my X account to rally the public." That evening, they held a secret meeting at an old community center with over 30 residents, people displaced by Liberty Vanguard's real estate projects. An elderly woman, Rosa Delgado, stood, her voice trembling. "I lost my family home to an unfair lawsuit. If Harrington's behind it, I want him to pay." Others nodded, their eyes blazing. Caroline stood before the crowd, her voice ringing strong. We're not just fighting a judge. We're fighting a corrupt system. Together, we can topple it. After the meeting, Caroline posted on X. The truth can't be silenced. Liberty Vanguard, and those behind them are manipulating justice. Let's demand fairness together. #Justice for Manchester. The post went viral, garnering thousands of shares, but also drew hostile comments, some from accounts tied to Liberty Vanguard. Public pressure surged, but Caroline felt momentum. The community was behind her. But as she left the community center, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Think a few posts will save you. Ellen and Walsh won't be safe forever. Caroline froze, realizing Kane, or someone close to Harrington, was tracking her every move. She called Jasmine immediately. Kane knows about the meeting, she said. Her voice tense. We have a mole. Jasmine, on the other end, replied. I'll check Marcus and Sarah's contacts. But Caroline, you need to be careful. Harrington's throwing everything to stop us. Caroline glanced back at the community center, where light still spilled from the windows. She thought of Rosa, David, Ellen, people who trusted her. She texted Nicholas Riccio, Nick, I need extra security for the press conference. Kane's closing in. Nicholas replied instantly. It's arranged, but Caroline, you're making yourself the biggest target. She gave a faint smile, her eyes blazing. Good, let them aim at me, as long as the truth comes out. As she stepped into her car, a figure flickered under a streetlight. Kane? Or just her imagination? She gripped the steering wheel, telling herself, they want to divide us, but this community is stronger than they think. Caroline Leavitt sat in her office, the laptop screen's glow illuminating her face, where determination mingled with worry. Last night's community meeting had ignited a spark of unity, but the threatening text about Ellen Brooks and David Walsh, plus Lucas Kane's lurking presence, reminded her time was running out. Ellen's evidence, emails, politician lists, and the name Sentinel, had exposed Judge Gerald Harrington's bribery network, but to bring him down, she needed a decisive blow. She opened a text from her husband, Nicholas Riccio, sent at midnight, found what you need. Meet me at the Renaissance Hotel, room 412. Caroline drove through the early morning fog to the Renaissance Hotel, where Nicholas waited in a small meeting room. He, with salt and pepper hair and worried eyes, slid a stack of documents across the table. I hired a financial analysis team to dig into Liberty Vanguard, he said, his voice low. They found a secret fund, coded as Renaissance Fund, routed through a bank in Bermuda. Millions from this fund went straight to Harrington's shell companies. He pointed to a chart, but here's the key. The fund is run by someone called Sentinel. Caroline scanned the documents, her heart racing. One note confirmed, Renaissance Fund allocated $10 million to political campaigns, approved by Harrington through court rulings. This was undeniable proof, not just of bribery, but of large-scale money laundering. If we go public with this, she said, her voice tense, Harrington will fall, and Sentinel will be exposed. Nicholas gripped her hand, his eyes full of concern. Caroline, this is a win, but it's also deadly dangerous. Kane knows you're getting close. She nodded, knowing documents alone weren't enough. She needed digital transaction copies to authenticate in court. Jasmine Carter, through a contact, introduced Caroline to Leo Tran, a hacker who'd worked with NGOs. Leo, a lanky young man with messy hair, agreed to help if his identity stayed secret. They met at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts, where Leo set up a temporary computer station. The Bermuda bank uses military-grade encryption, Leo said, his fingers flying over the keyboard. But I can get in, if you give me a few hours. Caroline and Jasmine stood guard, the air heavy with the hum of computer fans and clacking keys. She checked her phone, seeing her #Justice for Manchester X post had reached tens of thousands of shares, but was flooded with hostile comments from fake accounts. They're trying to drown us, Jasmine muttered. Caroline nodded, but her eyes stayed on Leo's screen. After 3 tense hours, Leo cheered. Got it, I have transaction copies from the Renaissance Fund. $10 million, funneled through 3 shell companies, all tied to Harrington. But the joy was short-lived. A noise echoed from the warehouse door, metal scraping concrete. Caroline froze, sensing danger. Leo, upload the data now, she whispered. Jasmine pulled out her phone, ready to call Nicholas's security. The door burst open, and Lucas Kane stepped in, his eyes predatory, holding a handgun. Leave it, he growled. You just don't know when to quit. He aimed at Leo. Hand over the drive, or this kid doesn't leave here. Caroline stepped in front of Leo, her eyes locked on Kane. Harrington's scared enough to send you, she said, her voice sharp. Lower the gun, Kane. You know this data's already backed up. Killing us will only make things worse for him. Kane sneered, but his eyes wavered. Leo, trembling, finished uploading the data to the cloud. Jasmine discreetly texted security, and distant sirens wailed. Kane heard the sound, his eyes flashing with panic. You'll regret this, he snarled. Then bolted out the back door, vanishing into the fog. Caroline exhaled, her legs weak, but she turned to Leo. You okay? Leo nodded, pale. Data's secure. I sent it to Jasmine. She gripped his shoulder, her voice firm. You just saved this case. When Nicholas's security arrived, Caroline and Jasmine checked the data. The transactions matched Nicholas's documents perfectly, confirming the Renaissance Fund as Liberty Vanguard's money laundering hub. But one detail chilled Caroline. A transaction noted Sentinel approved, transferred to H. She texted Jasmine. Sentinel's not just the boss, they're directly ordering Harrington. Jasmine replied, we need to get this to court, but Kane won't stop. Caroline called Nicholas, her voice urgent. Nick, we have the evidence, but Kane just attacked. You need to boost security for David and Ellen. Nicholas, his voice heavy with worry, replied. I'll send more men. But Caroline, you're going too far. If Sentinel knows, they'll target our whole family. She stared out the warehouse window, fog thick as her thoughts. If I stop, everyone pays. I have to finish this. She turned back to the screen's data, her eyes blazing. The Renaissance Fund was the key to toppling Harrington, but Sentinel remained a shadow. With the community's support, evidence in hand, and Kane stalking, Caroline knew the upcoming press conference would be a turning point. She told herself, they want to silence me, they'll see the truth is bigger than any bullet. Caroline Leavitt sat in a safe house in Concord, the dim light casting shadows on her face, where determination mingled with exhaustion. The confrontation with Lucas Kane at the warehouse last night still haunted her. He knew too much, from her location to the evidence about the Renaissance Fund. The data from hacker Leo Tran, combined with documents from Nicholas Riccio and Ellen Brooks, had exposed Liberty Vanguard's money laundering network, with Judge Gerald Harrington at its core. But the name Sentinel and relentless threatening messages made Caroline suspect there was a mole in her team. She glanced at her allies, Jasmine Carter, Sarah, Marcus Tate and Leo, reviewing data on a laptop. Jasmine, with sharp eyes, reported the Renaissance Fund data has been verified. We can submit it to the court and press any time. Sarah nodded, but her voice was tense. Harrington will hit back. We need to ensure Ellen and David Walsh are protected. Marcus, standing by the door, added the community's ready for the press conference, but rumors of a mole are spreading. Caroline clenched her fists, the sting of betrayal like a blade. The suspicion from Kane's attack, he knew exactly when and where she met Leo, forced her to act. He stood, her voice low but sharp. Someone in this room is leaking to Harrington. Kane couldn't move that fast without a source. The room fell silent, eyes exchanging tense glances. Leo, pale, muttered, "It's not me. I nearly died because of Kane." Sarah and Marcus protested too, but Jasmine narrowed her eyes, as if she'd suspected something for a while. Caroline pulled out her phone, opening an anonymous email received that morning. "You're trusting the wrong person. Check your lawyer." She looked at Sarah, her heart pounding. Sarah, with a clean record and a reputation in campaign finance law, was the perfect choice to handle legal filings. But Caroline couldn't take risks. "Sarah," she said, her voice calm but cold, "who have you contacted about this data?" Sarah frowned, her tone defensive. "Just my law office, to prepare filings. Are you accusing me?" Jasmine, not waiting for a response, opened her laptop and displayed Sarah's email history, secretly accessed by Leo, one email sent to an encrypted address, summarized the press conference plan and Ellen's location, stunning the room. Sarah, explain. Jasmine growled. Sarah paled, stepping back. I didn't send that. Someone hacked my computer, but her eyes wavered, and Caroline knew the truth. You're working for Harrington, she said, her voice bitter. How much did he pay you to sell us out? Sarah bowed her head, her voice trembling. They threatened my family. I had no choice. She looked up, eyes pleading. Caroline, I only reported locations, not the evidence, but Caroline's trust was gone. She turned to Marcus. Take her out. Call Nicholas's security. Marcus nodded, leading Sarah from the room as she sobbed. The group sat in silence. Leo, still shaken, muttered. If Kane knew about Sarah, he might know about Ellen and David's safe house. Caroline nodded, calling Nicholas immediately. Nick, Sarah was the mole. Check the safe house security now. Nicholas, his voice heavy with worry, replied. I'll send more men. But Caroline, you need to leave Manchester. Kane will target you next. She sighed, her eyes resolute. I'm not running, we're too close. She turned to Jasmine and Leo. We need to accelerate the press conference. Release the data before Harrington can counter. Jasmine nodded, but her eyes showed worry. Caroline, if Sentinel knows we have the Renaissance Fund, they won't just use Kane. They could destroy your reputation. Caroline gave a faint smile, thinking of the smear posts on X. They've tried, but the public's on our side. Checking her phone, a new text appeared from an unknown number. Think betrayal only comes from your lawyer. Check your journalist. Caroline froze, her gaze shifting to Jasmine. No, she told herself. Jasmine had risked everything. But the seed of doubt was planted, and with Kane lurking, she knew she had to be more cautious than ever. She texted Nicholas, increase security for the press conference. We're not out of the dark yet. Standing in the cold room, Caroline gripped the USB, her eyes blazing. The cut on her hand from Lucas Kane's attack had healed, but the wound from Sarah's betrayal still stung. The final anonymous text, check your journalist, planted doubt about Jasmine Carter, but Caroline forced herself to focus. The evidence on the Renaissance Fund, along with Ellen Brooks and David Walsh's documents, was ready for the press conference and final trial. Judge Gerald Harrington was faltering, but the names Sentinel and Kane stalking reminded her this battle wasn't over. She gathered the remaining team, Jasmine, Marcus Tate and Leo, to prepare. Jasmine, with sharp eyes, reported, I've contacted 3 reporters from major outlets, Washington Post, New York Times, and an independent channel. They're ready to publish the Renaissance Fund data after the press conference. Marcus, his voice deep and resonant, added, Manchester's community is organizing a protest outside the courthouse. Hundreds will show up to support you. Leo, still nervous after Kane's attack, said I've encrypted the data and sent copies to the reporters. If Kane gets the USB, we're still safe. Caroline nodded, but her heart was heavy. Sarah's betrayal forced her to reassess every ally. She looked at Jasmine, who'd risked everything from the start. The anonymous text could be Harrington's manipulation, but she couldn't take chances. Jasmine, she said, her voice calm but probing, who else have you shared the press conference plans with outside the group? Jasmine frowned, her eyes flashing with hurt. You're doubting me, after everything we've been through? She pushed her chair back, standing. Caroline, Harrington ruined my career 2 years ago. I'm not Sarah. Caroline nodded, raising a hand to calm her. I have to be sure. We can't lose anyone else. To strengthen the evidence, Caroline contacted a federal auditor, Anna Kessler, who'd investigated money laundering cases. In a secure call, Anna confirmed that the Renaissance Fund data matches international transactions the FBI is tracking. If you go public, Harrington won't escape. But Anna warned, there's evidence a high-ranking official, possibly Sentinel, is shielding him. You need direct proof, linking Sentinel to Harrington. Caroline revisited Ellen's documents, spotting an overlooked email. Sentinel approved $5 million for Senator R. Dawson's re-election campaign, channeled through Harrington. She frowned. Senator Robert Dawson, a powerful figure in New Hampshire, was he Sentinel, or another puppet? She texted Leo, "Check Dawson's accounts. If Sentinel's involved, we need to know before the trial." Leo replied instantly, "On it. But if Dawson's Sentinel, the FBI will step in." She called Nicholas Riccio, her voice urgent. "Nick, we might link Harrington to Senator Dawson. Can you dig into Dawson?" Nicholas, his voice heavy with worry, replied, "I'll ask some DC contacts. But Caroline, if Dawson's Sentinel, you're poking a hornet's nest. Kane's just a pawn. Dawson could mobilize the whole system." Caroline sighed, her eyes resolute. "That system's crumbling, we just need to push harder." That evening, Caroline prepared for the press conference, drafting an ex-post, "Tomorrow, the truth about Liberty Vanguard and those manipulating justice will be exposed. Stand with us, #Justice for Manchester." The post quickly garnered tens of thousands of shares, with hundreds of supportive comments from Manchester residents. But one comment from an anonymous account chilled her. "Think a press conference will save you? Sentinel sees all." She screenshot it, sending it to Jasmine, "Kane or Sentinel? Trace this account." Jasmine replied instantly, "I'm tracking the IP." "But Caroline, you need more security. Kane knows about the press conference." Caroline nodded, calling Nicholas again. "Nick, we need extra protection for the press conference, and Ellen and David's safe house. Sentinel's watching." Nicholas replied, "It's arranged. But you have to promise to be careful. I can't lose you." She gave a faint smile, her voice softening. "You won't lose me. But I have to finish this." As she left the office, a black car parked a few meters away, its headlights off. Kane, or Sentinel's people? She gripped her phone, hurrying to her car, her heart pounding. In the rearview mirror, the car didn't move. But as she started the engine, her phone buzzed with a new text. "You can't protect everyone. Choose Walsh or Brooks." Caroline froze, anger flaring. She texted back, "Try me. I'll protect them both." She floored the gas, speeding into the night, knowing the upcoming press conference and trial weren't just a chance to bring down Harrington, they were a life-or-death battle with Sentinel. With the community behind her, evidence in hand, and allies by her side, she told herself, "They want to scare me. They'll see I'm stronger than that." The Manchester courthouse buzzed like a battlefield. The marble lobby echoed with whispers from reporters, protesters, and spectators. Outside, hundreds of residents, mobilized by Marcus Tate, held signs, #Justice for Manchester, and End Corruption. Caroline Leavitt stood at the storm center, her navy blazer crisp, blonde hair neatly tied, eyes blazing with resolve. The previous day's press conference had ignited the media, with Jasmine Carter's leaks to major outlets exposing Liberty Vanguard's Renaissance Fund and judicial bribes. Today, the final trial was her chance to topple Judge Gerald Harrington's empire and unmask the mysterious Sentinel. But the anonymous text, "Choose Walsh or Brooks," gnawed at her, a reminder that Lucas Kane was lurking, and the cost of victory could be steep. Inside the packed courtroom, the air was thick, like before a storm. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras trained on Caroline as she stepped to the witness stand. David Walsh and Ellen Brooks, secured in a safe house with Nicholas Riccio's security team, had provided sworn affidavits, their evidence now in Caroline's hands. Leo Tran's hacked Bermuda bank data, Anna Kessler's federal audit report, Ellen's emails, and Nicholas's financial analysis filled the folder before her. The weight of every sacrifice, Sarah's betrayal, Kane's attacks, the community's trust, rested on her shoulders. She glanced at Jasmine, seated in the gallery beside Marcus, and gave a slight nod. This was their moment. Judge Harrington ascended the bench, his silver hair gleaming under fluorescent lights, his face a mask of legal authority. But Caroline saw the tension in his eyes, the slight tremor in his hand. "Mrs. Leavitt," he began, his voice deep and measured, "the court has received your submitted evidence regarding alleged financial misconduct by Liberty Vanguard. You are reminded that all claims must meet federal evidentiary standards under Section 52. Present your testimony, and refrain from dramatic theatrics." The subtle mockery sparked murmurs in the gallery, but Caroline didn't waver. She stood tall, her voice clear and commanding. "Your Honor, I present comprehensive evidence that Liberty Vanguard, through the Renaissance Fund, operated a multi-million-dollar money laundering scheme to illegally fund campaigns and bribe officials. She held up the folder. The evidence includes bank records, emails, recordings, and sworn affidavits from David Walsh and Ellen Brooks, confirming payments to manipulate judicial rulings. The courtroom erupted in gasps. Harrington slammed his gavel, his voice icy. "Order, Mrs. Leavitt, these are grave allegations. Under Rule 803 of the Federal Rules of Evidence, hearsay is inadmissible without verification. Provide direct evidence linking transactions to specific individuals." His voice was controlled, but Caroline spotted sweat beading on his forehead. She opened the folder, pulling out a printed email. This letter, verified by a federal auditor, documents a $2 million payment from Liberty Vanguard to Granite Holdings LLC, a shell company tied to a charity under your oversight. She paused, letting the words sink in. The email states, Harrington demands payment by month's end to dismiss the lawsuit. I move to enter it as Exhibit A. The gallery exploded in whispers. Harrington flushed, pounding his gavel repeatedly. Silence. Mrs. Leavitt, you are treading close to contempt. This court does not tolerate baseless accusations against its integrity. His voice shook, betraying panic. Caroline pressed forward, unfazed. Exhibit B, a recording from a Liberty Vanguard meeting, in which you are heard requesting $1 million for judicial cooperation. Shall I play it here? The courtroom fell silent, all eyes on Harrington. His hand trembled as he gripped the bench, his voice faltering. That recording is inadmissible until verified, he snapped, but his tone wavered. Mrs. Leavitt, you are trying to turn this court into a political tool. Your theatrics belong on television, not here. The mockery was a last gasp from a man unraveling. Caroline's voice cut through like a blade. The truth isn't a stunt, Your Honor. Exhibit C, financial records from the Renaissance Fund, obtained from a Bermuda bank and verified by the FBI, showing $10 million flowing through your shell companies. Exhibit B, emails linking these funds to Senator Robert Dawson's re-election campaign, approved by an individual codenamed Sentinel. I move to subpoena Senator Dawson to clarify his role. The mention of Dawson sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Reporters typed frantically. Shouts from protesters outside seeped through the walls. Harrington lost composure. You have no authority to make such demands, he yelled, abandoning judicial decorum. This is a witch hunt. You're just a political puppet, Leavitt, hiding behind your husband's money. The emotional outburst stunned the court, exposing the man beneath the robe. Caroline seized the moment, her voice calm but fierce. If I'm a puppet, explain this, Your Honor. She held up Anna Kessler's audit report. This report confirms every transaction, every bribe, and names you as the recipient. You didn't just take money, you sold justice to Liberty Vanguard and Sentinel. Who is Sentinel? Judge Harrington. Tell the court. Harrington's face contorted, his voice breaking into a shout. You don't know what you're doing. Sentinel will destroy you all. The admission spilled out, raw and uncontrolled, echoing in the stunned silence. Gasps filled the room. Jasmine's eyes widened in the gallery. Marcus clenched his fists. Caroline pressed forward, relentless. So you admit Sentinel exists? You admit taking their money? Speak, Your Honor. Harrington froze, realizing his mistake. His mouth opened, then closed, his eyes darting to the exit. Before he could regain control, the courtroom doors burst open. Federal agents, led by an FBI officer in a dark suit, stormed in. Gerald Harrington, the officer declared, you are under arrest for bribery, money laundering and obstruction of justice, under Title 18, Section 201. Agents surrounded the bench, handcuffs glinting. Harrington staggered, his voice a whisper. You don't understand, Sentinel, they'll come for you. The agents led him out, his robe dragging like a fallen king's cloak. The courtroom erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted. Cameras flashed relentlessly. Protesters outside cheered. Caroline stood still, her heart pounding, victory mingling with unease. She had won, but Harrington's final words echoed. Sentinel was still out there. As the crowd surged, Jasmine pushed through to Caroline, her face beaming. You did it, he's finished. But Caroline's gaze was distant. She gripped the audit report, thinking of the email tied to Senator Dawson. Was he Sentinel, or just another puppet? She turned to Marcus, coordinating with community leaders. Keep the protest going, she said. This isn't over. He nodded, understanding the weight of her words. Outside, Caroline faced a sea of microphones. Mrs. Leavitt, is Senator Dawson involved? A reporter shouted. She paused, choosing her words carefully. The truth will come for everyone involved. No one is above justice. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nicholas. I'm so proud of you, but be careful. Dawson's people are moving. She looked up at the cheering crowd, their signs waving like a tide. For the first time, she felt the full power of their support, but also the looming shadow of Sentinel, larger than ever. As she stepped into her car, a final text appeared from an unknown number. Harrington was just the start. Sentinel sees you. Caroline clenched her jaw. She deleted the message, her resolve hardening. The courtroom victory was hers, but the war was far from over. With the community behind her, evidence in hand, and a new target in sight, she whispered, "Let them come. I'm ready." The fall of Judge Gerald Harrington, led away in handcuffs after admitting ties to Sentinel, shook the city. Outside the courthouse, Marcus Tate's protesting crowd still cheered, holding signs for #Justice for Manchester. Caroline Leavitt stood before a forest of microphones, pale sunlight illuminating her face, where determination mixed with fatigue. The previous day's press conference and courtroom showdown had made her a symbol of anti-corruption, but the final text, Harrington was just the start, Sentinel sees you, reminded her that danger still lurked. With Senator Robert Dawson in her sights, and Sentinel unmasked, Caroline knew her fight was only beginning. In a small meeting room near the courthouse, Caroline strategized with Jasmine Carter, Marcus and Leo. Jasmine with sharp eyes updated major outlets. Washington Post, New York Times are publishing details on the Renaissance Fund. The public's demanding an investigation into Dawson. Marcus, his voice deep and resonant, added Manchester's community is planning a march to Dawson's office. They want answers. Leo, still shaken from Lucas Kane's attack, reported, I found more transactions linking Dawson to a shell company, but no direct proof he's Sentinel. I need time. Caroline nodded, clutching Ellen Brooks's documents. We took down Harrington, but Dawson's the key. If he's Sentinel, the FBI will have to step in. She thought of Anna Kessler, the federal auditor who verified the Renaissance Fund data. She texted Anna, Dawson might be Sentinel. Any way to speed up the investigation? Anna replied instantly, FBI's watching Dawson, but we need direct evidence. Send me Leo's new transactions. She turned to the group, her voice steady. Jasmine, prepare a new article, highlighting Dawson's role. Marcus, keep the community united. We need public pressure. Leo, keep digging into Dawson's accounts. But as she spoke, her phone buzzed with a text from Nicholas Riccio. Kane was spotted near Concord. Security's tightened for Ellen and David, but you need to leave Manchester. Caroline sighed, her eyes resolute. I'm not running, Nick, not now. That afternoon, Caroline spoke at a community gathering in Manchester's Central Square. Hundreds Rosa Delgado, families displaced by Liberty Vanguard, and youth with #Justice for Manchester signs surrounded her. Harrington has fallen, she said, her voice echoing through speakers, but justice doesn't stop. We'll chase the truth whether it's Dawson or anyone else. The crowd roared, but a small group at the square's edge, with cold eyes, put her on guard. Kane's people, or Sentinels. After the speech, she met Rosa privately, who gripped her hand, her voice trembling. You've given us hope, Miss Leavitt, but be careful. People like Dawson don't let go easily. Caroline smiled, squeezing her hand. I promise, Rosa, we'll win. But as she left the square, a black car cruised by slowly, its windows dark. She gripped her phone, her heart racing, but didn't look back. At the safe house, Caroline got a call from Jasmine. Caroline, I found something big, Jasmine said, her voice urgent. An encrypted email in Leo's data, sent from Dawson to an anonymous account. It mentions Sentinel as a group, not an individual. Dawson's just a middleman. Caroline froze, her mind reeling. Sentinel was an organization. She asked Jasmine to send the email immediately. Opening the file, she read the last line, Sentinel orders a cleanup. Levitt and witnesses must disappear by next week. She called Nicholas instantly. Nick, Sentinel isn't a person, it's a group. They want me, Ellen, and David dead. Nicholas, his voice panicked, replied, God, Caroline, I'm getting you out of there. Security's not enough if they're an organization. She cut him off, her voice firm. No, Nick, I'll face them. Call the FBI, report this email. She hung up, thinking of Ellen and David, who'd entrusted their lives to her. She couldn't fail. Caroline texted Anna Kessler, sending Jasmine's email. Anna replied, this is the evidence the FBI needs. We'll launch a full investigation into Dawson and Sentinel. But you need to protect yourself. Kane's still out there. Caroline nodded, though Anna couldn't see. She opened her laptop, posting on X. Harrington was just the first step. Sentinel, we're coming for you. #Justice for Manchester. The post went viral, earning tens of thousands of shares, but also drew hostile comments from fake accounts. One comment chilled her. You can't run forever, Levitt. That night, Caroline didn't sleep. She reviewed every piece of evidence, emails, recordings, transactions, and drafted a statement for the FBI, requesting federal protection for Ellen and David. At dawn, she got a text from Marcus. Dawson just left Manchester. Rumor is he's meeting lawyers in D.C. She replied. Track him. If Sentinel's an organization, Dawson will lead us to them. She stood, looking out the window as daylight hit the city. She called Jasmine, her voice low. Prepare the final article. Reveal that Sentinel is a group, and Dawson's the link. We need to strike first. Jasmine agreed, but warned Caroline. If Sentinel's an organization, they might have people in the FBI. How much do you trust Anna? Caroline paused, recalling Sarah's betrayal. I trust the truth, she replied. And the truth will protect us. As she left the safe house, a patrol car from Nicholas pulled up. He stepped out, hugging her tightly. Caroline. I can't lose you, he said, his voice choked. She smiled, touching his cheek. You won't lose me, but I have to finish this. For Manchester, for us. He nodded, his eyes proud yet worried. Caroline stepped into the square, where the community gathered. Rosa led the way, holding a sign, We are justice. Caroline stood among them, feeling the power of unity. She thought of Harrington, now in jail. Kane still at large, Dawson on the run, and Sentinel, a shadow larger than all. She raised her hand, her voice ringing. Today, we won, but tomorrow we fight on. Who's with me? The crowd roared, their cheers echoing like thunder. Caroline Levitt stood at a podium in Manchester's community center, sunlight from the windows illuminating her face, where fiery resolve blended with pride. A week after the historic courtroom victory, with Judge Gerald Harrington detained and Senator Robert Dawson under FBI investigation, the city still buzzed with emotion. Marcus Tate's protests had spread, making Manchester a national symbol of anti-corruption. But the final text from Sentinel, the game is just beginning, haunted Caroline, a reminder that the mysterious organization was still undefeated. Today she spoke to solidify her legacy and lay the groundwork for the next fight. The crowd, Rosa Delgado, families robbed of homes by Liberty Vanguard, and youth with #Justice for Manchester signs, surrounded her. Caroline took a deep breath, her voice resounding through the microphone. We took down Harrington, but justice doesn't stop. Sentinel is still out there, and we won't rest until the truth is fully exposed. Applause thundered, but she noticed a few furtive glances at the crowd's edge. Kane's people, or Sentinel's operatives. She clenched her fists, refusing to let fear take hold. After the speech, Caroline met Jasmine Carter and Marcus in a small meeting room. Jasmine, laptop open, reported. The FBI is expanding its investigation into Dawson. His emails confirm Sentinel is a group of high-level businessmen and officials, but no specific names yet. Marcus, his eyes steady, said the Manchester community wants to establish an election finance watchdog fund, named after you, the Levitt Justice Fund. Caroline smiled, touched but humble. It's not just my legacy, it's Rosa's, Ellen's, David's, ours. She thought of Ellen Brooks and David Walsh, now under federal protection, after their testimony helped topple Harrington. She called Anna Kessler, the FBI auditor, for an update. Caroline, Anna said over the phone, we've traced a Swiss account linked to Sentinel, but be careful, Kane's still at large, and Sentinel could target your family. Caroline nodded, thinking of Nicholas Riccio. She texted him, Nick, FBI's closing in on Sentinel, check our home's security. Nicholas replied instantly, done. But you need to rest, Caroline, I'm worried. She turned to the group, her voice low. We need a long-term strategy. Jasmine, keep digging into Sentinel with reporters. Marcus, build the Leavitt Justice Fund to monitor political campaigns. She paused, her eyes sharp. And we need to find Kane. He's Sentinel's weapon. Jasmine nodded, but worried. If Sentinel's an international network, we'll need allies beyond Manchester. What about contacting DC activists? Caroline agreed. Do it. We can't fight alone. That evening, Caroline returned to the safe house, where Nicholas waited. He hugged her, his voice low. You've changed Manchester, but I'm scared of the cost. She smiled, touching his chest. The cost is worth it, Nick. For justice, for people like Rosa. He nodded, but his eyes remained anxious. As Nicholas left to check security, Caroline opened her laptop, reviewing an email from Leo Tran. A new transaction was uncovered, $15 million from Sentinel to a DC political fund, noted, for Phase 2. She frowned. What was Phase 2? She posted on X. Harrington fell, but Sentinel's not done. We'll keep fighting for truth. There's justice for Manchester. The post garnered tens of thousands of shares, with comments nationwide supporting the Leavitt Justice Fund. But one anonymous comment chilled her. Your legacy will be ashes, Leavitt. She screenshot it, sending it to Jasmine. Trace this account. Sentinel's desperate. As she prepared for bed, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Want to find Kane? Look closer. Sentinel's always near you. Caroline froze, glancing out the window. A figure flickered under a streetlight, then vanished. She called Nicholas immediately. Nick, someone's watching the safe house. Send security now, he replied. Panicked. I'm coming, don't go outside. But Caroline didn't wait. She checked the door, locked it tight, and gripped her phone, her heart pounding. She reflected on her journey, from confronting Harrington in court, surviving Kane, to inspiring a community. Her legacy wasn't just toppling a corrupt judge. It was the fire she ignited in Manchester's heart. She texted Jasmine and Marcus, ready for the next phase. Sentinel won't stop us. Looking out the window, the city's lights gleamed like a promise. Sentinel might lurk, Kane might strike, but Caroline knew, with the community beside her, truth as her weapon, she'd never fall. She whispered, Come on, Sentinel, Manchester's ready. The story of Caroline Leavitt's fight against corruption in Manchester, New Hampshire, mirrors urgent issues in American society today, particularly the lack of transparency in politics and finance, and the power of community, when united for justice. Caroline's battle with Judge Gerald Harrington and Liberty Vanguard's Renaissance Fund network, shadowed by the mysterious Sentinel, echoes real-world scandals, like investigations into illegal political funding or judicial manipulation. Sarah Nguyen's betrayal and Lucas Kane's threats reflect the complexity of trust in social movements, where personal interests can undermine shared ideals. Caroline's journey, from White House press secretary to justice icon, shows how individuals can drive major change through persistence, solid evidence, and community support. As seen in her mobilization of Manchester residents and use of social media with #JusticeForManchester. Lessons for real life. To drive change in American society, individuals must be relentless like Caroline, unafraid to confront power like Harrington, but rely on collective strength, as she did with Jasmine, Marcus, and Rosa. Use modern tools, social media, or independent journalism, to amplify truth, but stay vigilant for potential Sarahs, requiring discernment in choosing allies. Above all, like Caroline protecting Ellen and David, despite Kane's danger, prioritize justice over fear, because true legacy, like the Leavitt Justice Fund, is built on courage and faith in community. In a polarized nation, unity and transparency are key to overcoming the sentinels of our time. Subscribe to the channel to join us in tracking Sentinel and supporting Caroline Leavitt's justice journey. Thank you for being with us, and see you in the next video to explore the new chapter of #Justice for Manchester.